Casey, welcome to the ProFit podcast. How are you?
I'm doing fantastic. Thanks, Matt. I appreciate you two having me on.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to have you here. It's a pleasure to have someone that's an expert in an area we haven't really discussed before. So for those listeners that haven't come across you or your work before, Casey, can you just give people a little bit of an insight as to who you are and what it is that you do?
Absolutely. I am Casey Zavaleta. I'm currently the Director of Operations for DTS Fitness Education, which is a continuing education company for personal trainers. So we run courses to help trainers to upskill and really gain confidence and competence in different areas of their business. Now, I say I'm the Director of Operations, but kind of a more informal title might be habits expert on the team, because really habits and the development of DTS habits coach as the course has been the area that I've leaned into the most.
Great. Well, I think we're really excited about having, because it's the first time I've really seen habits coach as a title as well. I don't know about you, Matt, but that was quite a new title. I haven't seen that one before, and we're excited to have somebody on who's an expert in that area. I have to ask you, what's it like to work with Ben Mcdonald?
It's a blast every day. It's like half laughing and then half getting things done, basically, all the time.
He's been on the podcast before, and he was lots of fun, but very, very knowledgeable as well. So I'm guessing you'll be no different. So the first question we wanted to start with today was, it was actually a line in your bio. So doing a bit of research before the episode, we looked at everything that's online. There's plenty of content on there if anybody wants to go and check it out. But there was a line in your bio that says, "My purpose begins with helping people see that they are whole, worthy, and good exactly as they are." And that really stood out for me because it's very similar to our values as well in what we talk about on the ProFit podcast, that what we're trying to help people do is see that they are good as they are. And we want to help them uncover that a lot of the time and help them potentially change a little bit of their identity and how they see themselves. So we really wanted to talk a bit about that and get your take on it, really. So why is that in your bio? Why do you like that so much?
Awesome. I think in fitness, many people come to fitness and look for a trainer because of a perceived deficit that they see about themselves. There's something about themselves that they're not happy with, and often they're attributing a lot of the lack of confidence or challenges that they feel in their life to that one specific thing, right? So for many people, it's looking a certain way. They think, well, if I looked a certain way, then I would be happy and worthy of love and confident and more successful and all of these different things. So we come with this idea that we're not enough and we're not good enough. And then people look at what they perceive to be fitness. So whether they go online or they look around the gym at trainers and what they're doing, and they think, wow, that's what fitness is supposed to look like. And it's so different from where they are in their own journey. And they think, oh my gosh, I need to be at that place. I need to be at the top of the mountain, just like that person that I see. And I think that's the biggest mistake that people make when they enter fitness. So the start of what I like to do with people is create this space where people feel like it's okay wherever you are. Like these perceived deficits that you have about yourself, they don't make you a lesser person. You are a good and worthy person exactly as you are right now. And we can create comfort in that. And we can, look ourselves in the mirror and say, it's okay. Like this is my starting place, and be fine with that. And then what that allows us to do is it allows us to take just that one tiny next little step. That's our next step, not the fitness professional that you see, or not the influencer on social media that you see. It's not their next step, it's yours. And so I really think it's important to kind of start there. And I like to create a space of sort of comfort and safety for people to realize that, like, you're good exactly like you are. And we're going to be really real about exactly where you are. And that's fine. There's no judgment. And then we'll, work on whatever the next step in your journey is.
I'd written down a question to ask you about that next, to say, do clients take to it well? And I just thought of another question as you were talking there that I want to mix into that. when you advertise, because me and Matt and I spoke about this on a previous episode, about when you advertise in fitness, quite often the advertising is kind of that perception of what fitness should be to try and get people in the door. Yeah. So is there a transition? How do you advertise to get clients in to help create that new perception? Or is there a transition where you create that safe space to then create the new perception? How do you do that?
Yeah, it's a wonderful question. I would say that while I have my purpose written online, actually, I would say it's less of an explicit thing where I say off the bat, you are good and worthy exactly as you are right now, and more of an experience that's created in the way that I talk to someone about what's going on in their life. So creating that space of comfort and safety is really how I approach it. It's less of a like marketing tactic and more of a like, as a coach, I understand that this is what I am trying to do and create in the space where I'm coaching a client, if that makes sense.
Yeah, so it's more about like how you treat the person when they meet you and how you create that safety around them.
Yeah, I would say so. And just like really listening and getting to know like, where is this person now and what's their next step going to be, and helping them be okay with that, instead of them saying, oh, well, I need to look this certain way in this certain amount of time, or I need to accomplish this certain lift in this certain amount of time. Like, it's not really like the language that I feed into. I don't talk to the perceived deficits that someone sees. I'm talking to the process that we are going to engage in and how we're going to do that. So yeah, it's a bit of a difference and a bit of a nuance. Yeah, I would also say that when you advertise or market in a way that speaks to people's deficits, that's the type of client also that you attract. So when you use language or you market more around, this is my ethos and it's about helping you make very small but very impactful changes in your life. And we're going to talk about this more in our conversation, and we're going to look at things outside of the gym, and I'm going to help you think about your sleep and your relationships and your eating and all of these different things. And it's going to be more of a holistic approach. Like when you talk that way, that's also the type of client that you attract. And so I think part of it is also being okay with, I'm not going to be for everyone. Like as a coach, you don't need to be for every type of client. That's not how it's going to work. You can be for a certain type of client that's going to work with you for a really long time, and that's going to engage in a process that's sustainable.
Brilliant. Great. That really answered the question. Perfect. Thank you.
Yeah.
How well do clients take to that? Do you find their resistance to it at first, or I get the impression you're very easy to talk to and you get them very comfortable. Do you find people are resistant, or they take to it quite well?
I find that most people are appreciative of a space where they feel heard and listened to, and where they, again, it's not like an explicit thing, but implicitly feel like, okay, I'm fine. I'm fine as I am. This trainer isn't speaking to, oh, well, we need you to be like this, or we need you to get here, or, all of my clients end up with this sort of transformation, or, whatever it is. Like, I think people want to feel comfortable and successful. And yes, they're going to come with preconceived notions about what this fitness thing is supposed to look like. They're going to come with these ideas of, well, I'm going to go into the gym and I'm going to feel, really bad at this fitness thing, and my trainer's going to kick my butt and it's going to be hard. And they're going to come with those notions. But I think over time, you can chip away at those things when you make them feel successful. And they do, take that one next step for them, and they feel the success of that, and they feel the impacts in their lives, and their confidence goes up a little bit at work. And all of a sudden they're connecting to their family a little bit better. And they're like, wow, this actually feels really good. So I think inherently, like, it's almost like giving people what they couldn't have told you that they want or need, but it's actually a really powerful space to give someone.
Yeah.
I think it's really true that people have this, preconceived idea, because we work with a lot of PTs and help them in their business, and a lot of those still mention that they speak to clients that will say to them, oh, I need to I want a PT, but I need to get fitter first. And
Isn't
it's
that the funniest
like
thing?
this mind-blowing moment where you're like, oh no, no, you don't need to do that. You'll probably go and do the wrong thing anyway. But yeah, I think I've sort of sat quietly and just listened to you talk there, Casey. And I think some of the things that I want to just pick out in what you've just said are like this idea of making sure we're sending out the right message as well as trainers and things like that. Like not sitting down with someone and saying, you need to do this, you need to do that, because me and Paul have talked before about how in this industry at the moment, there's been so much emphasis on just getting people in a calorie deficit and just getting people doing a certain step count every day. And we're sort of like really commoditizing what we do and making it overly simplistic and overly like ridiculous in terms of what transformation is actually about. So PT shouldn't just be sitting people down and going, you need to sit and eat this many calories, you need to do this many steps, you need to do this many training sessions. You know, again, it's going to work for a very small number of clients and they're the people they might attract, but for most it's probably not going to get them anywhere.
I want to pick out the power of that line as well. I'd never thought of that before, that you're good as you are. You're good as you are. If you want to make some small steps for success, then that's great too, but you're good as you are. You don't need to be told anything different. Yeah, I hope people listen to that bit.
Yeah.
How long does this was again an episode we did recently about how long a PT client lasts. How long does this process last of kind of building up new habits and a different lifestyle? In your experience, how long does it last?
I would say it's a lifelong journey. Forever. It never ends. Because it is just that. It's a process. It's a process that you're deciding to engage in. And the way it looks and the changes that you decide to make and how deep you go with it are going to evolve over time. But like for coaches, I would say that this, like, if you have a client for 6 months, or if you have a client for 5 years, like this habits coaching process is something that you can incorporate into your coaching with either of those clients. And you can do it for the entire time that you work with them. So we're going to talk about this as well, but we give you a system, and the system is adaptable to wherever your client is, however long you've been working with them, whatever type of change that they want to make. And so, I mean, I can say from a personal standpoint, like I will always in my life be working on my habits. You know, it's just kind of like, it's exactly what we say in fitness, right? That's like saying, well, how long will you do fitness? I'm sure you both agree that's going to be something that you engage in for the rest of your life. Like that's our plan, right? It's longevity and movement. And quality of life. So yeah, I would say that habits is just the same.
Cool.
So let's go down that path then of starting to unpack habits and what this looks like for people. Because I made a note here, I made a question about the fact that I feel like the term habits has become almost like a fashionable thing to talk about over the last few years. And I think a lot of people use the word without any real depth or context. They sort of mention, oh, you need to build healthy habits, but then there's no substance to it. They make it just sound like it's something you go away and you figure out for yourself. And I think it's doing it a bit of a disservice. So just talk to us about like how important are habits, especially for fitness professionals like us. Like how big a role should this be playing in what we do and the service that we offer to people?
Yeah, well, habits are part of our lives, whether we decide to gain an awareness of them and change them on purpose, or we just let them be, right? So the one thing that sets humans apart from all other animals is our brains. It's not our physicality, it's our brain. And our brains evolved to do this fantastic thing where it automates tasks that you do on a regular basis. And what that does is it conserves energy and it conserves your attention. So the reason that our brains do that is because, let's say that you're doing a certain task every single day. Do you need to have full attention and full consciousness on that thing? If the task is going to be the same, it's going to happen based on the same trigger, it's going to happen at the same time every single day. No, your brain would like to be able to think about higher level things and to wander and, make a plan for the rest of the day or whatever it is. So you can think about this in the context of brushing your teeth. That's like the most classic habit that I'm sure we all have. Do you consciously think about how you're going to put the toothpaste on the toothbrush, where you're going to start on your teeth? I mean, maybe you do if your dentist is getting on you about brushing better, but most of us are on autopilot and we're thinking about something else. We're making a plan for the day, or we're thinking about how we slept last night, or whatever it might be. So it's actually a very wonderful thing that our brains do, and that's going to happen whether we decide to address habits or not. For me, the goal is to help people to gain an awareness of their habits, conceptualize how they would like to construct them in their lives so that they can optimize their own goals, whatever their goals might be for themselves. So yeah, it's interesting to think about habits as being sort of a trendy buzzword right now, because I understand what you mean, but that's also like saying that, well, squats are just a trendy buzzword right now. Well, no, actually humans have been squatting for thousands of years, whether we want to capture that word and put it on social media a lot or not. Like, you're going to do the squat pattern every single day of your life, either way. So to me, it's just one of those basics where it's like, yeah, the fitness industry is going to latch onto it and use it and manipulate it in whatever way that like it wants to generate sales and revenue. But really, like, habits are one of those fundamental aspects of humans and behavior. And I just think we have a huge opportunity to understand them better and use them to our advantage.
Yeah, it's like when you start to look at, and probably similar but different in a way to habits, when you start to break down things that you already do as part of your day-to-day experience as a human, optimizing those just makes sense, doesn't it? Whether that be improving your sleep, improving your breathing, improving lifestyle habits. Quite often we focus on new things that we're not doing rather than optimizing what we already do as a foundation. So it makes perfect sense to me that habits should be part of what we help people understand. And I think what you mentioned right at the start there, Case, is really important, is just giving people an awareness of the fact that these exist, whether you like it or not. Like, they're here, and what you do with them is up to you. That's it. You've got the power to change that, to keep them, to throw them away, to add new ones in. That's up to you.
Yeah, 100%. It's empowering and it's exciting because you can think about constructing your day like you want instead of going through, 70% of your day in sort of this unconscious automatic fashion.
Yeah. And from sort of like a higher level, I know this is going to be really specific to each individual, but one of the things I was wondering from your experience is, with most people, do they need to be undoing poor habits first or putting new, better habits in place? I know that sometimes when we approach nutrition, for example, we often try and encourage people to add things to their diet before they start taking things away and doing it the opposite to how they might usually do it. When it comes to habits, how does that usually play out in terms of, I don't know how dangerous it is to label habits good and bad. That's probably the wrong way to talk about them. I'm not the habits expert.
Yeah. Well, yeah. So I don't love to label anything good and bad and attach morality to things. Like, you're not a bad person for engaging in a certain habit, right? Like, that's not how it works. But yeah, I think the exact same as you're talking about with nutrition applies with habits.
Right.
I always encourage people to lean into abundance first, put in some good habits and add in some good actions, because what that does is it starts to change how you see yourself. So it starts to form this certain identity that you have for yourself. So many of our clients that come to us, they've never been in the gym. They don't see themselves as fit and healthy people. It's not part of their identity. Maybe they more see themselves as a couch potato that doesn't really enjoy engaging in fitness, but knows that they have to. Like, that's more of the underlying identity that they're holding. But if we can help that person, like, let's say we implement a habit and we're trying to up their daily movement. So we start working on a habit where they're going to go for a 2-minute walk every single day outside. If we add in that habit, when that person continually engages in that action, every single time they engage in that action, they're making a vote for being the type of person that's going to go out and move every single day. I don't care how small the action is, it still counts. It's still a vote. So the power is it starts to chip away at that former identity of, well, I'm just not this like fitness person. And they start to have evidence. They're collecting evidence for themselves that I am the type of person that even when it's freaking raining outside, I get up and I get my ass off the couch and I do my 2-minute walk. They're forming this identity. And then that identity that's now changing starts to seep into everything else. And that's why small changes are so impactful, because they're a vote for a different identity, a different person that you want to become. And then once you have that identity of more of like a, okay, well, I'm the type of person that gets outside for my walk every day. I'm prioritizing my health in this way. Would that impact your eating choices? Yeah, it totally starts to. Does it impact the type of activities that you choose to do with your kids after dinner? 100% it does. So that's really the power of these small things. And I always like to add things in because they start to be those votes. It's much more challenging to subtract a bad habit out. And in my experience, what I found over time with myself and for people that I've done habits coaching with, I find that interestingly, if you give it enough time by putting in these good habits, the bad ones, they're crowded out naturally. The same as would happen when you're coaching someone in nutrition. All of a sudden, there's not really room to eat whatever they were eating before because they're concentrated on eating all of these wonderful things at dinner. So yeah, so that's generally my approach. Abundance first. It's very powerful, and you'd be so surprised at the power of even that tiny little action, like even on the scale of 1 to 2 minutes.
Yeah, that's got to be good for a coach to hear as well, because I think a lot of coaches fear becoming the bad guy who's taken away all these habits that the person's currently got. Like, stop eating this, stop doing this, stop doing that. Whereas with that little voting for a new identity method, the bad ones just, like you say, get crowded out. They just naturally drop them without you ever having to really beat them with a stick to say, stop doing that. I think a lot of coaches, that's their first option. With the new habits, bringing in the new positive ones, are there things that you go to first, like the 2-minute walk? Is that a really good win for people? Or any others like that you use a lot?
Yes, I do love that one. So in our habits coach course, we give you a questionnaire that allows you to determine, would it be best for you to start with sleep, with eating, with connection, which just means interpersonal relationships, or with exercise. So more like the movement that you're doing outside of the gym.
Right.
It's going to be different for everyone. The same as, it says personal trainer on the back of our shirt. So we can't say, oh, well, everyone needs to start with working on drinking water. Everyone needs to start with walking. Like, we really do need to sort of prioritize what that person needs. But there's another really important piece of it that I think is just such an important thing for coaches to understand. You as a coach cannot impose changes on your client. The client has to be bought into the change, and they have to decide to make the change. You are the guide. You are the person that can hold them accountable, that can talk them through the process. But one thing that we really, really emphasize in Habits Coach is that the person actually has to decide what change they're going to make. And we check in with them on a scale of 1 to 10. How much do you want to do this thing? If they're not at least an 8, scrap it. If you brought an idea as a coach and said, hey, I really think it's important that you do mobility every morning, or you do meditation every morning, the person's like, okay, like, my doesn't have to do it. I guess I'll try. You've now pushed a change on someone. It's not going to work. They're just not there. So I think coaches have to be very careful. I think we need to ask more questions instead of telling, like less telling, more asking, and more saying, what do you think would be impactful? What do you think would be a good change to make? Because that's the person telling you their next step, right? Like, we're talking about sort of understanding that you have to go on a process of know where they are, and then what's their one next. They've just told you what that one next step is, because whatever they're ready to do is their next step. So I just think it's a really important thing for coaches to get honest with themselves about. And we mean well. Like, when a coach says, I need you to stop eating 3 hours before bed, is that a good change for someone to make? Of Of course it is. We mean well and we want the best for our client, but if they're not there and they're not ready for it, it's just not going to happen. So it's just a really important thing to understand about behavior change. Like, what does the person want to do and what are they ready for?
Again, there's a journey for the coach there as well, again, isn't there? That there's a journey for them to go from an instructor to a coach, and that they're coming from a good place with that instruction. Like you said, they're coming from a place of positivity. They really want the best for the person, but it just isn't going to work. And at some point you notice that. So I guess it's getting on more courses like yours and reading more books around the subject and trying to help yourself with it as well.
Definitely. Yeah. I think understanding motivational interviewing, understanding the nature of a coaching conversation, like these are all absolutely essential skills for a coach to have. And this is sort of the soft skills side, right? Like we've got to have all the technical knowledge and you have to be able to coach the person and write their program, do all of that stuff. But this other side, that's the coaching piece of what's your relationship like with your client, is another piece that I think people don't, they think it'll just come naturally. It's actually also a skill, like navigating through those coaching conversations. So I think it's an important thing to put some effort into as well.
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, I wish more coaches would put a lot more time and effort into that side of their education, which I think it's on the up, 100%. While we were on kind of a little bit of misconceptions about habits and how people might not use them correctly, I guess we want to know this as well from the client's perspective. What are clients' misconceptions and mistakes around habits? And then same thing for coaches and PTs. What common misconceptions and mistakes do they make around habits? What do you find?
I would actually say that they're the same.
Yeah.
It's just the way that humans approach behavior change is the problem. So we think we need to make a big change. We just do way too much too soon. And what ends up happening is we put ourselves on what I call the roller coaster of behavior change. So what the roller coaster of behavior change looks like is, we all know the classic storyline, that person that makes a New Year's resolution of I'm going to start working out. And then for maybe 2 weeks, they're in the gym every single day or 6 days a week. But then 3 months later, they're not using their gym membership at all. So they've gone on this roller coaster of trying to change their behavior and make this change, but really they did so much that they were inevitably going to come back down. Or in nutrition, it looks like the person that's like, I'm going to cut out all sugar for 30 days straight, right? Wow, huge change. And then a year later, has anything about their eating habits really changed? No, because they put themselves on the roller coaster. And then we have this all or nothing mentality associated, that once we make this huge change, the second we can't maintain it, we just drop off altogether. So what we need to understand is that we need to start a lot smaller than we think. And clients and coaches alike, I think, have this sort of mental barrier to get over. Because if you tell a client, I just want you to work on walking for 2 minutes a day, what are they going to say? That's it? Are you kidding? I pay you how much? And you're telling me to walk for 2 minutes a day. Okay. Like, it seems ridiculous, but I see it over and over and over again. We think it's going to be so much easier than it is. People will go through the process, right? So in the course, we have coaches first implement a habit for themselves. So you have to go through it yourself and decide, okay, what's one thing I'm going to work on and what's one habit I'll implement in my own life.
Good.
And I get so much feedback after someone tries to implement a change that's small on the scale of 5 minutes, 2 minutes. They go, whoa, that was way harder than I thought it was going to be. Because behavior change is hard. It's so challenging. 90% of people fail when they try to implement a habit. We're not very good at it. So what you have to do is you have to think, okay, if I was going to picture my most stressful day of my life, you guys know how that feels. You have tons of clients. It's your most busy day of clients. And then, I don't know, your son's crying when you get home from work, and then you forgot an ingredient for dinner, so you have to go run out to the grocery store to get it, and just like chaos. Whatever new habit you pick, you still need to be able to do it on that day. So that's your filter. Not the best day when you're like, I've got everything under control, everything's working for me. No, it's your most stressful day, because we're looking for consistency. We need this to happen every single day. So people just make that mistake left, right, and center of like, oh, that's it. That's the only little change. That's the only little thing that you want me to do. Yeah. Like all the research says this. That's how you start. There's I don't know if you two have heard of the book Tiny Habits by BJ Fogg. One of my favorite habits books. I highly recommend that you read it. He runs a behavior science lab, I believe at Stanford University. And he talked about his process of trying to get himself to implement a habit of flossing his teeth. And he tried at this for years, could not get himself to floss his teeth every day. The way that he finally got himself to do it was he said, all I need to do is I need to floss one tooth. I'm going to floss one tooth and stop. And that little tiny thing in his mind, okay, that was small enough that he said, all right, well, obviously I can do that. So it's fine. So when he was having that moment of, should I floss or should I not? It's just one tooth, grab it and go. And then he built up from there, and he finally implemented this now automatic and easy habit of flossing his teeth. But like, that's a behavioral scientist, and that's where he started. So the research supports this, but as human beings, when we want big changes that feel exciting, like the roller coaster feels very exciting, we kind of make that we kind of make it challenging on ourselves.
Just casting that positive vote as often as you possibly can, no matter how small it is. Exactly.
Yes. It's not about the scope of it. It's the positive vote. I'm glad you brought it back to that, Paul. Exactly. Yeah.
Now, I'm going to ask one question that I know our listeners will be asking in their heads right now, is what do you do when the client is questioning the value of the session, when you're just giving them one little habit? I guess we can probably sit here, and I know Matt will probably say the same thing, that we'd be confident enough in our ability now to be able to talk them down from that. But I know that a younger trainer or a newer trainer to the industry is probably thinking, I can't just give them a 2-minute walk. I just can't. What would you say to somebody like that?
Yeah, we talk about this conversation that inevitably comes up a lot in the course, to be honest. So we talk about the coaching of the whole process as well. My key recommendation, to be honest with you, I always default, instead of like lecturing and giving info and saying like, well, just trust me, like it's really going to be important. Like people, I don't know, it doesn't really work with people. I instead ask a question. So I say, okay, tell me about the last time that you tried to implement a new habit or make a change, and tell me about that process. Did it work? Did what you did work? And I listen, and they're going to inevitably describe, oh, well, I said the roller coaster. I started off and it was really good and it was all, but then, life just got in the way, it got hard. And then it was like, I just stopped doing it. So then you say, okay, I have something that's based on the research and it's going to be a little bit different. Do you want to trust me and try out this process instead? And then you just try, and like people buy in pretty fast, actually. I find once they start getting those little successes, it's really that like initial hump. Again, that first conversation, but like questions, talk to people about their experience, talk to them about what they're thinking, instead of just, information diarrhea at people.
Yeah. And then ultimately when they're doing those habits, it feels good. So it starts to get momentum day in, day out. And you get that positive, I guess you get that positive feedback pretty quickly when people are doing it.
And I think as well as professionals, we forget that our clients haven't had a fitness related win for, well, maybe ever. And if they have, it might have been 20 years ago, 30 years ago, pick a number. So what seems like a small win to us as the coach might be something pretty big to them, even if it's a small action. I know the other question that people will be asking in their heads, Casey, is when a client doesn't do the habit, how loud do you shout at them? No, I'm only joking. What do we do in that scenario?
Yeah, great question. Because that will happen as well also, right? Like change doesn't happen where someone automatically comes back and they've done their habit 7 out of 7 days a week. In fact, at the beginning, I prefer that someone doesn't do that.
Right.
Because when they start off, and they're perfect 7 out of 7 days, and they're like, yes, I've done this thing, they've likely, potentially just put themselves on the roller coaster. Because are they actually, like, have they really followed the process of incremental improvement, or are they kind of just like excited about this thing, and then the second that they can't do it 7 out of 7 days, are they going to stop? So at the beginning, I actually get more excited when someone comes back and they're like, yeah, I did it 2 or 3 times a week at the start. That's incremental improvement. Wonderful. So I think talking to people about what does incremental improvement look like is very important as well. And you set the expectation actually right off the bat. So if someone wasn't engaging in this certain habit at all last week, and then we implement this habit, and this week they do it once, that is incremental improvement. I guarantee most clients will not come back to you and say, I did so well, look, I did it once. But that's part of the reframing that we have to do, and say, okay, great, you did it once. Next week, let's go for twice. Like, it sounds incredibly slow, especially on the scope of like, oh, well, we're only doing a 2-minute walk and then you did it twice a week. Yes, like that is exactly what I'm talking about. Little changes, incremental improvement is how we implement truly sustainable changes. So having that conversation right off the bat is sort of how I frame the expectations for the start of the process.
Yeah. That answers another question, because I was going to ask, does it have to be a daily habit? Does it have to be something that they're going to do every day, even if, because I'm trying to think about some of the bigger habits that they might form eventually, where they go to the gym, but they might not go to the gym every day. But I can see how these smaller daily habits would make a person more likely to then go and do those bigger things that aren't necessarily daily. But yeah, that sort of answers that anyway, I think, in terms of we're almost kind of hoping they don't do it every day initially, and it's incremental change that way. Well,
yeah, let me be clear. The goal is consistency and automaticity. Like, we're working towards a small thing that can happen every day. So I think it's important to differentiate between what a true habit is and then what a behavior is.
Yep.
Sometimes I use them interchangeably, but they're not the same. So going to the gym 3 times a week is a behavior. Yep. You still make that choice. And yes, it might be a very easy choice for you to make because it's in line with your identity and it's who you are. And this is the routine that you're in. And like, you know, Monday, Wednesday, Friday, like that's gym day, but that's a behavior. A habit is something that happens based on a trigger. So something triggers you to go into this, your brain to launch into this habit loop where it's automatic. And that's the thing where I'm talking about with like the brushing your teeth, or when you drive somewhere, you drive to work, and it was completely automatic because your brain just took you there and actually you were thinking about other things. So when we talk about implementing habit change, I'm actually talking about something that does happen every single day. We're going to get it as consistent and automatic as possible. Right. But inevitably, once we change an identity, those bigger behavior things also will come along. And those are things that we could track as well. But slightly different approaches just because of the way that your brain processes those two things.
Yep.
That kind of answered the question I was going to ask as well, that once the smaller habits start to form each day and the identity is kind of being gradually changed, do you get a real uplift in people's results because does it start to compound on itself a little bit more because their behaviors are getting better as well?
100%.
Yeah.
100%. Like some of the changes that happen after someone implementing a small habit for a couple of weeks, I don't think they'll ever stop blowing my mind. Like we fill out reflections. So part of the process is that each week you sit down and you look at your score, which is how many times did you engage in your habit, and you reflect on that week. And some of the things that people write in their reflections, I'm just like, wow, it is not about that one small habit that we implemented. Like this is already having a snowball effect into people's lives. It's very cool to see.
And when you get, like, again, just for coaches listening to this thinking, I'm still not sure of setting off on that path with my clients. Once you get momentum with that, my experience of it is that coaching the client then long term, it actually becomes a lot easier because they have a really good sense of themselves and they're really good at forming these habits and their behaviors are good. So you tend not to have as much to do, if you know what I mean. Like, you find that as well? Like people are easier to coach the longer you have them, really.
Yeah, I think there's definitely a certain type of client that I can think about that is that way, where it's the person that really buys into the process, and they get the process and they get the steps. And so then they just start doing it. And it seems to happen naturally. But the cool thing about habits coaching is that, like, you can go as deep as you want, right? So like, let's say that someone's health habits are solid. I've then coached people on productivity habits, or like thought habits, because the way we think is also habitual. Like, you can keep going right into whatever you want to improve in your life with sort of this process and this system. But yeah, I definitely think there's a type of client like that for sure.
Awesome. Okay. We've got some kind of quick fire questions now. It was one of Matt's mentoring clients who's actually just taken your course. So he had lots of questions coming off the back of it. So do you want to kick us off with one of those, Matt?
Yeah, I mean, the first one's a great question because it allows you to plug the course, Casey, which is always advisable on this podcast. How do you think personal trainers can benefit from your habits course?
Well, aside from all of the things that I've said, I think this is the gap in our industry. Honestly, I think this is where personal training is headed. I think that we live in an information age where anyone can look up 1,000 YouTube videos on whatever they want about fitness. But what's going to happen is this coaching piece and personalizing how you're improving someone's life. So really being like a personal health coach for that person is going to be the future of personal training, and why people are going to continue coming to us. So to DTS, like, the reason that we have this course is because it's a gap in our industry, and we want people to understand we're in the business of behavior change, and we misunderstand behavior change left, right, and center, even if our intentions are awesome. So whenever you take a DTS course, we're giving you confidence and competence with a system. A system gives you a thought process. It gives you something to plug in all of your tools into so that you understand what it takes, no matter what type of client is in front of you. And you feel confident, no matter who walks up to me, I'm confident that I can help them to improve their habits in some way. So I think that those that take DTS Habits Coach understand where our industry is headed, and are going to be the people that are going to be the most successful in our industry, in my opinion.
Yeah, I think that actually goes in line with some of the stuff we've been talking about on here recently, Paul, where we've talked about, if your version of coaching is just going to be to sit people down and work out a calorie target and get them, give them a training plan, that's going to be a race to the bottom. And, a computer can do that for you. You're going to be replaceable. You're going to need this really high level personal coaching approach that actually creates change in people. So yeah, I think that makes perfect sense, that answer. How do you see, let's say a trainer goes and does a course like this and takes this on, for people that are maybe thinking about doing it, how does it then fit into their personal training model? Does it become part of like their client onboarding process? Does it become something they start to use every single session? Like, what does it look like for a trainer?
Great question. All things that we cover in the course, but I will give you sort of the Spark Notes version of it. The way that we've created this system, it can fit right into the personal training sessions that you're already doing, as a way for you to talk to someone about what's going on outside of the gym, a way for you to help clients get that success in what they're looking for, and therefore a way for you to retain clients. So what we suggest is wherever you are in the system, you carve 5 minutes out of the start of your session to sit down with someone, do the check-in about their habits. It takes a little more time in the beginning when you're sort of helping them learn the process, but really it fits right into your sessions that you're already doing with your client, if those are 60-minute sessions or whatever they might be. There are other ways that you can fit habits coaching into your business as well, though. I've done small group habits coaching, where it'll be like an 8-week program. And I have people come on Zoom each week, and I walk them through the process, and we do it together. And then there's opportunity for discussion and community building in that way. So you could also sell a package where you say, this is the start date. We're going to be doing a habits coaching session, whatever you want to call it, a habits coaching program. And then you walk people through and teach them the process, and then they can continue doing it after. I've also done literally just habits coaching, where it's more like 30-minute sessions that we do each week. And then it switches to bi-weekly, where we just sit down and we talk about someone's habits and move through the tools. So I think that however you picture and you want it to fit into your business, everyone's is a little bit different. I think it can work. It can be in group. It can be literally just as an add-on to what you're already doing in PT, or it could be on its own coaching. What I will say though, again, coming back to this buy-in piece, I always recommend, like, if you have a personal training client that comes to you and in their consultation, they're like, I just want training. I just need to do the things in the gym. I'm not here to talk about anything else. Like, there will be those clients. Fine. Like, the system's not for them right now. No problem, right? Maybe 2 years down the line, it will be. So yeah, just asking the client, like, are you interested in this? I think is always an important thing, not just like a given. You must, improve your sleep habits with me. Well, not everyone's there, right?
Yeah.
So it goes against the system if we force them to do the system.
Exactly. Yes. The whole
exactly.
philosophy. Yeah.
I think most of these quickfire ones, do you know what? Through the conversation, we've answered a lot of them. Things like, is there a difference between a habit and a behavior? Willpower, we haven't discussed an awful lot. Is there a take on willpower?
Yes. Willpower doesn't work.
Simple as that.
Yeah. If you're trying to white knuckle a change and it feels like you're white knuckling it, it's not going to last. Your will to do it isn't enough. It's too big of a change for you, or it's the wrong change for you to make right now. So, I mean, we've all done it. Like, we make changes in our head where we're like, this would be a really good thing for me to do. I'm going to force myself to do it. If it's force, if it's white knuckling, all it means that wasn't the next step for you. That's step 50. You can get there, but that's not the next thing for you and where you are right now. So willpower doesn't work. I don't speak to willpower very much.
Well, and this, we heard you mention about different types of packages for doing this, that you've got some Zoom sessions as well. So this is something you can do as an online package for anybody who runs an online PT business listening right now?
100%. You can do this live, you can do this virtual, both 100% work. Yeah.
Right.
I think we've covered all the main bits we wanted to cover, haven't we, Paul?
I think so.
So I'm going to throw it over. I'm going to put you on the spot here, Casey. I'm going to throw it over to you and say, what have we missed? What have we maybe not discussed that people, or you would encourage people to go and learn more about, or you want to make sure that they've heard from you? Is there anything that we've not touched on in our short time together?
Yeah, good question. We touched on the identity piece a little bit. There are different influences on our behaviors, and the number one influence on your behavior is your beliefs. Whether that's beliefs about yourself and who you are, or beliefs about how the world works. You play out the story of your beliefs in your life. The cool thing is, like we talked about with identity, that all it takes are these tiny little actions as proof that start to change and challenge some of your beliefs. One example, I'll give you a personal example of a belief that I've had in the past and what it's sort of taken to chip away at that. I used to have a belief that doing more was always better. More work, more busyness, more activity, whatever it was. I think this is pervasive in our society, but I thought that it was always, we need to do more, bigger change. There have been many situations where I've challenged that belief and I said, okay, I'm going to do less, whether it's in work or whether it's in a habit. I'm going to take the scope smaller than I think. And then when I do that, I see the evidence that it works, and it starts to challenge that belief over time of, okay, more is not always better. And so then when I'm in those situations where it's a decision of, do I do more or do I do less? I can make a different decision than maybe I had in the past. So really what we're doing here with these actions, and I think what I want people to understand is that it's deeper than the small actions that you're taking. Mm-hmm. It's building up evidence that will challenge this underlying belief you had that affects the way that you see the world. The way you see the world is your experience of the world. right? We all have this certain lens and this certain perspective that we see things through. When we take tiny, tiny actions, we can start to challenge those things, and that's how your life changes. When you start to shift these beliefs, again, about your identity or about some way that you think the world works or that you see the world. So that's sort of the key takeaway here, really. Like there's a system and there's a process for figuring out what the small action will be and then implementing the small action. We have to have that part, but it's not really the work that we're doing here.
I think that really wraps it up perfectly, because that's, for me, and I'm sure Matt will agree, that's a proper transformation. When somebody changes the identity, the beliefs, their view of themselves, I think that's a proper transformation, and that'll stick for life then, hopefully. And that's what we're aiming to do. So yeah, I think that wraps it up really, really well. Casey, this has been fantastic. And I know that everybody listening to this will have taken a hell of a lot away from it. And just as a finisher today, I guess, tell everybody where they can find you on Instagram, Facebook, anywhere like that, DTS website, and then obviously look at this DTS Habits Coaching course, because I know Matt's client found it fantastic, and I'm sure a lot of trainers would benefit from it.
Yeah, that's awesome. And before I launch into sort of the contact pieces, I just want to say a huge thank you to both of you. Your questions have been super thoughtful. I appreciate the opportunity to come and chat with you about these things. I think, I think this show that you're creating for your audience is clearly a really impactful one. Just because of the quality of the questions and sort of the listening and the process that you two seem to have. So thank you very much for that. As far as where to find us, DTSFitnessEducation.com is the place to find all of our courses. You can find Habits Coach on there. It is a virtual course that we run, so you can join from anywhere in the world. We do weekly webinars, and then you have online course content to complete in between. We run Habits Coach courses 2 times a year. The next one is going to start in November. I believe it's November 10th. So if anyone is interested in getting in on that, and if anyone wants a discount on that as well, we can put this in the show notes, but they can use a code Casey200 to get $200 off that course registration, as a little thank you to listening to this podcast episode. So we can include that. But otherwise on social media, you can find DTS at DTS_EDU. You can find me at Casey M. Zav. And I would say those are probably the best places to kind of explore what we're all about and what I'm all about.
And you have a podcast yourself as well, don't you, Casey?
Yes.
Yeah, I actually put that on pause. So I had a podcast for about 2 years called How Do You Feel? The episodes are still up and live, but I'm not currently podcasting at the moment. I've been a little bit more into the course development side with DTS. I do hope to resume at some point, but I cannot speak to a live podcast show at this point.
You're gonna have to resume it because you're too close to that 100 episode mark.
Yeah.
You can't stop there. Get to 100 and then stop.
I know, you're so right. I that actually did cross my mind. What am I at, like 93 or something?
Yeah,
it's like,
yeah.
So close.
there was a sense of anxiety seeing you at that number. You've got to get to that nice round one. Okay,
just for you, Matt. I'll do it just for you.
Well, thank you very much again, Casey. It's been an absolute blast, and we'll probably get you on again in the future at some point. It's I imagine it's a topic we can go into over and over again in different ways. So thank you very much for that.
Definitely. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hello and welcome along again to the ProFit podcast. I'm your host, Paul Campy, and I'm here with Matt.
How you doing, everyone? I hope you are good. We've got a special guest on today, haven't we, Paul?
We're into our guest series, and today's guest is somebody I think everybody's really, really going to enjoy this episode. She is Director of Education at DTS Fitness Education in Canada. She's a nutritional therapy practitioner, and she also teaches a course called Habit Coaching, which is the main reason that we had her on today. And she's called Casey Zavaleta, and I think the guys are really going to enjoy this episode, don't you, Matt? Yeah.
It was. We've already had the conversation, and then introducing this afterwards. But honestly, this is for those of you out there that are thinking about being around in the industry for any length of time. Pay close attention to this conversation, because Casey hits on some hugely important points, some of the things that me and Paul have talked about in the past, but always sound better coming from someone else. And yeah, just a really enjoyable conversation that covers a lot of ground in a short space of time, I think, Paul.
Yeah, agreed. A really, really good conversation with a very passionate person who clearly loves what she does and has a lot of great knowledge in this area. And if you're struggling with clients at the minute who are doing things that they just shouldn't be doing, this will give you a ton of information about how to tackle that. So sit back, enjoy the episode, and we'll get some feedback for you afterwards.
And just quickly, hang around right until the end, because if you are interested in doing Casey's habit course, she does just randomly drop in a massive discount right at the end. So stick around for that.
That's right. We weren't expecting that, but she does offer a discount code at the end. So listen to that for the very end.